bringing to you my greatest excitement as I now launch the dream that I've been wanting to bring to you all for such a long time. My first podcast, Slaying the Dragon by Elizabeth Allen from Empowered Alchemy, as we celebrate, commiserate, empathize with compassion, raw, wild and real journeys of our soul struggling to get through this human life on Mother Earth during the times of confluence and change. But you know that you have the tools to navigate your highest self-purpose. You know that you are now bringing towards you self-care as you now have the ascension strategies in place to own and honor your own truth and share your story with others, to give them the courage and the strength to know that if you can share one tool with someone else, you are making their day so much easier and so much more rewarding. Hi, I'm Monique Peters. I'm so excited to welcome you here on my podcast, Slaying the Dragon with Elizabeth Allen from Empowered Alchemy. Our chat today, Monique, is raw, wild and real. It's unedited. There may be a moment where we can be triggered by the emotions of a real life emotion, a story that has placed us in a position of where we are, what changed our world from just going along in a safe, sometimes uneventful or unquestioning path to where we start to receive the call to action, to step into our power. And so if I feel that you're needing, or if I feel that the subject that we're talking about is a little bit overwhelming, is it okay if I just bring us back into center to not just help you regroup, but maybe if I even feel to help regroup people watching us here today as well? Is that okay?
No problem at all. Yeah.
It's unedited. So, and you know, like when our world falls apart, Monique, you and I both know, over the years we've been chatting since we first met with Women with Altitude and
yes,
the awards.
It was about 4 years ago.
It was very exciting when, you know, I received my first award, and it called me to action to have the courage to step forward and to be the voice, to find another platform to bring awareness to people with lots of different life situations that we question or we don't know. There is a way of actually helping us help others. And I really believe that if we can help one person change their world today, that's my sole purpose and my passion. And I know that we're very aligned like that. I value you for your friendship, and I really value you for your courage coming onto this platform, drag kicking and screaming. But no, you're ready for this. Look, and I want to introduce Monique Peters, yeah, my beautiful friend. And so thank you for being you. And I remember the first time we met, and we had some challenging conversations, and you've really heard your call to action, haven't you?
Well, one of the first things you said to me, Elizabeth, and I'll never forget it, was, you don't believe in yourself.
I wouldn't be that subtle, would I?
You've got to start working on that. And
start working on that.
Yeah.
Right now. Let's start now.
Definitely. And I heard that, and I actually felt that in my heart. And I knew that I couldn't go further with my mission unless I addressed that. So
how did you start to address that?
Well, would it be easier if I talked about what I do first? Because that's what led me on that journey. So,
all right. I really like the way you've done that. So now what I'm going to do is actually rewind it before we go forward. Your journey became, as a mother, a wife, you know, we all have our own challenges. Would you like to tell me about that moment when you felt that your world fell apart and you didn't know what to do except probably start rebuilding your own world with your own resources. Can you tell us just one story that may have been that call to action? I know we all have lots of stories. We have a movie that, you know, and you are the lead actress in your movie, but if we have one story that you would like to share where the challenges called you to action to start realizing that maybe you have something to offer to help curiosity or and you started researching or you started following, if you like. I always wear the red thread. I feel like we're connected to the red thread. And I think that takes us on a journey where we continue to meet more amazing people that add to our tribe and our valuable connection. So can you share that one story?
Oh, okay. So my son had learning challenges.
Fantastic. I think this might be the one by the look on your face. Have a little drink of water before you proceed.
It might be a good idea.
And then we'll charge right on in. I think there's a lot of people whose children or family members have learning difficulties. And as a teacher, I used to be a teacher before I resigned into life coaching and hypnotherapy. And I found that I think learning difficulties can be very wrongly diagnosed. And I don't really want to call it a disability. I would prefer to call it a different ability, because I feel that if we can find one thing that they love doing and they find a passion, we can then build a confidence and help them rewrite their neural pathways. And I think this is what has really built your segue forward. This is over to you, Monique, and share your story with your son, you know, with confidentiality to the much, with respect. But there was a problems with his life growing up that probably as a mother traumatized you. And
very much so. Just the bullying alone. You know, the bullying is a terrible part of learning challenges, and many children get bullied for many reasons, but children with learning challenges find it difficult to talk back, to talk their way out of it, to use their wit. They're often thinking as fast as everybody else, but they may not be able to communicate it as quickly, which is what my son had. So he had something called auditory processing disorder. And that is like, if you can imagine, okay, here's a good example. In the last few years, people have been wearing COVID masks. And quite often you cannot understand everything they're saying. You cannot catch every part.
And I find it really challenging, I think, because I'm such a visual person. I need to, you know, I'm not hearing impaired, but I'm visual. So I need to see facial expressions, and not having that mouth, I can't read what's being said. You know,
that's how a person with auditory processing disorder feels all the time. There's a spectrum, of course, you know, so that some of them have it a bit worse than others. But my son was mixing up his speech a little bit. So he had a problem with sequencing in his brain. There were only very, very subtle problems.
So with sequencing, can you... There's a lot of people that are probably watching this that have no idea what you're talking about. So,
okay. So he used to say
unpack that a little bit, with sequencing and auditory processing. Can you just give a little bit of background to that?
So the children who say hospital, for example, instead of hospital, they have a problem with sequencing. They're not hearing and processing the things in the correct order.
Okay.
So that's what they're giving back. Yeah. So it's when if they have it their whole life, and most of them will have been born with it, it means that their phonemic map, so their ability to distinguish between the different sounds of a language, is impaired. So they don't develop a proper map. And then when they go to learn to read, they can't match those sounds with the right letters or with the right symbols. And that's why, you know,
as well. That would affect their spelling as well, reading and writing and spelling. So the whole literacy and communication ability is now challenged because of this.
That's right.
Wow, that affects every part of their life, doesn't it? So
it does, because he would The example I often give is if the teacher says, okay, children, sit down, get your textbook out at page 23 and answer questions 1 to 4. He wouldn't be able to catch all of that. So he would ask the child next to him, and depending on the mood of the child next to him, they might say get lost, or or they might be helpful, but that builds up frustration in a classroom, and it's the sort of frustration that a teacher doesn't see or may not see.
Or they may get into trouble for talking or interrupting the class and and not listening, and there's actually greater underlying problems. Yeah,
that's right. And see, because of those sort of things, as the curriculum becomes more complicated as they get older, and there's more manipulation of information and auditory work going on, more auditory processing, they tend to fall behind. And so a lot of them don't get diagnosed. So my son wasn't diagnosed with anything, even though he had assessments. He had markers for little things, but not enough for a diagnosis. So there's this gap where these children sit, and they're often accused of being lazy, or accused of being not paying attention, and they tend not to be able to finish their work. And they suffer socially as well, because they can't keep up with that sort of banter. The boom tish of the jokes and things like that. They don't get that rhythm very well. So if a child is having either spelling problems, reading problems, having that not a correct rhythm, they're not kind of in the quiet rhythm, that's usually auditory processing disorder. And it's even behind dyslexia. It's part of autism. It's part of the neurodiverse spectrum. So it's getting to my dark night of my soul. I was surviving with all of this and trying to find the right ways to help him, and trying to get him to speech therapy. And I was trying even to use my knowledge of schooling itself, because I felt like he wasn't getting enough repetition, which I came to understand later is the basis of the neuroplasticity that I now learn and teach everybody. But I just felt that by instinct, he needed more repetition at things. So I used to, because when we were at school, we used to do the same sort of sums over and over again, but with different numbers. And because of that repetition, we built fantastic memory pathways, and they didn't seem to be getting that. So I would give him my own extra work as well. But by the time he was in year 3, he was so tired of all the extra work I was giving him that he had to go to speech therapy. I had him on different dietary protocols. I removed gluten, and, I was trying to do increased his fish oil and things like that, but nothing seemed to really help. And then it was when I read a book called The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge. And that was when I realized, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. He has an auditory processing disorder. But the good news was it could be fixed, or not fixed, but improved, and improved by a lot. When I saw that, see, when you have a child who has these struggles, and you see them getting bullied, and you're sending them to a place where they're going to get bullied, where they're going to have a terrible time, it's the hardest thing to do. You as a mum, it's the right thing to do to send them to school. And you have to enforce that, but instinctively, it's not good for them at the moment. Maybe later something else happens. So when this came along, that was when I realized I was having a terrible time. Until then, I was kind of surviving and finding our way through all of this. I developed I have eczema, but I made it a lot worse from the stress that I was in. I couldn't sleep at night. I was so itchy. It was a few years of a terrible kind of, I know eczema is not pain, but
stress was getting under your skin.
Yes, terribly.
Thank you, Louise. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I did do a lot of reading. I did do a lot of research, and it was when I finally, he was in year 6 when I came across that book. And that's when I realized, wow, the whole system is not helping my son. I'll invest in this program. And it was later that I worked with it's called Fast for Word. It's been used by speech pathologists and schools all over the world, very big in America. It's still fairly small here in Australia. But I was so happy with the results that I got from it. And it wasn't perfect. It didn't cure him of anything. But he did communicate. It was a great place to start because it improved his ability to understand what people were saying to him. Yeah. And it improved his ability. He used to say hippopotamus, for example, instead of hippopotamus. And those little things kind of just disappeared when he did this program. And the program involves a lot of listening. Mm-hmm. You know, it's about retraining how the brain hears sounds. So he had to do lots and lots of repetition of putting things in order, listening to, you know, ba, ba, da, da, sa, sa, but playing games with them to make it more interesting, things like that. And lo and behold, because that program was driving the neural pathways in his brain to make those connections, sure enough, they did. But the problem was because he was already in year 6, he had developed a belief that he couldn't learn. So while I thought, oh, we've got things great for high school now, he actually went into high school still feeling like he was not worth anything.
Low self-worth. And lack of
very low self-worth.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have known it because it's only now that he's 21 and he can communicate to me about how he felt back then, which he really couldn't do that well. Mm. It's really hard to hear, you know. It's very hard to hear. So I eventually found work.
What was his coping mechanisms with his lack of low self-worth and his lack of confidence? Did that play out in other areas of his life as well? You know, like with social conflict?
Yes.
How did it play out? What were the visual signs? Were there any visual signs?
At school, he would avoid as much school as he possibly could. So he would spend a bit longer in the bathroom when he shouldn't have. When there was a sports carnival or a swimming carnival, because he wasn't into sport, he would do his best to be, you know, unwell on that day. But he was a very compliant child. He was a good boy. He didn't want to be a naughty boy. So but where it really came out was when he was in high school. By year 8, he'd had so much bullying and so much of a hard time that he developed, he couldn't digest any food. So he was just constantly bringing up food and he just couldn't digest a single thing. And so he ended up being at home for about a term and a half. And you know, honestly, if I can speak honestly, that term and a half where we didn't have to send him to school and, you know, he wasn't getting bullied every day was just fantastic for both of us. Yeah. You know, he improved a lot. He picked up a lot. I actually remember having lots of conversations with him at the time, and I realized how intelligent he was. You know, once he was given the chance, and once he felt safe enough, and this is one of the things I talk about a lot with my students now, is that students won't learn unless they feel safe. Yeah. And he did not feel safe at all. And how many other children are feeling that way in school now? You know, so yeah, until I realised I could take this on as a business, I worked with the speech pathologist for a few years, and I saw this happening with many other parents, and their children were actually, their ability to pay attention was improving. A lot of the children were all of a sudden picking up books and wanting to read, and it wasn't a chore to kind of make them read all the time. And they were just generally improving at school. Some kids, their sporting performance would improve, but it was because they were listening to their coach better. You know, things like this.
And their confidence was starting to improve, so they felt
that is where you really feel this.
They were more present.
Yes.
Yes. So being more present, you know, and being more mindful gave them other results as well, which helped improve their self-worth.
But having the neuroplasticity in place to be able to do that. So for whatever reason that you know, blockages may occur, you know, that may be that they children, for example, are not getting enough nursery rhymes when they're young anymore. And they were the perfect way to wire a brain for good learning and good language, because language and learning is so well connected. You know, they're not getting that repetition with the alliteration. You know, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. You know, these are all great ways of separating and
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and they're not hearing nursery rhymes anymore, let alone they're not being read to enough. So that's why all speech pathologists will say, please read with your children as often as possible. You know, when they're young, when they're very young,
and the
singing
rhyme
songs to them,
and the repetition is so important, like you were saying, and that happens through nursery rhymes. It's a very good point, isn't it? So the old-fashioned nursery rhymes, so becoming the, you know, the mother or the grandmother or the carer state, and trying to keep everyone safe is actually creating other problems in other areas. So that's another topic. We'll stay on topic. But so and how did he navigate his way, or how did you navigate your way through from year 8, from when he would digest? How did you get him back to school?
That was hard, and again I relied on his compliance. You know, we did change schools. We took him to a nicer school. It was a smaller school. And they were really good there, because by that stage he was already getting the ideas of running his own business. And God bless that school. Because he wasn't a sporty fellow, they let him on the sports afternoons have time to work on his business, which I thought was so fantastic. Beautiful. I really, really loved that, and I was so grateful for that. And that made a difference.
So he's very entrepreneurial.
He is. He's extremely entrepreneurial. He's very bright. He has a lot of thoughts on politics and psychology, and it's very hard to keep up with him these days, because he has very big plans, very big plans.
Good.
So
and the call to action and that call to continue to investigate or research, and because now curiosity's been sparked, so you're now following a path. And that path, you had a choice to keep following that path or give up, but you chose to follow the path. How did that play out for your son first, before we go on? When did he leave school? What year was
he left at the end of year 10. So he had to leave at the end of year 10. That was hard for us, because I had left school in year 10 and I really wanted him to go on to year 12. But by that stage, I could completely understand. You know, he needed to be away from the school system.
The traditional school is not for everybody, is it?
No, it's not. And by this stage, look, he's getting on 16, 17. So I was starting to understand that he needed his independence, and I needed to let go and let him take control of his life. So he got a job in a local restaurant, and he was sort of finding himself through all of that. He needed some time to recover from school, and he needed a bit longer than others may have. But it's really interesting to see how he's developed through COVID, and how he's educated himself, because he doesn't learn formally. He doesn't like the formal, he doesn't like the idea of going to university or anything like that. But my golly, he's been learning. He's been learning.
There's different ways of learning, isn't there?
That's right. That's right. He's been learning off from entrepreneurs on YouTube and so on. He's constantly doing that sort of thing. I rarely find him doing anything else other than watching the sort of videos that he's growing from. Which I think is great. You know, something that we love watching together are movie critiques. He loves watching movie critiques, and he'll start, you know, when we talk about how the lighting affects the mood in a movie, or the music, or how they construct the scene, or anything like that. He's really, really good at breaking down and even getting those hidden meanings in movies as well. You know, like where something might be placed, and he picks up a meaning and he says, "Oh, Mum, see that cross in the background? They're telling us something there." And you know, that it's wonderful to see him blossom out of the school environment.
Fantastic. It really is. And how has this changed your world?
Well, as I was working with the speech pathologist and I was becoming aware of how big this problem was, and that so many other children are feeling the same way that my son did, I thought, well, the speech pathologist was on Sydney's North Shore. So I thought, well, we've got so many kids in Macarthur who need this, who could do this. And I thought to myself, because I'd be running a business from home, I could make it as inexpensive as possible, to make it as affordable as possible, so that more people could do it. And then as I was taking on that decision to do it, I was coaching myself with Carol Dweck's growth mindset. And this is where I found learning about the growth mindset helped me with my personal development and my growth, because she brings in the idea of the neuroplasticity. So I actually teach the children now about neuroplasticity and how their brain works, how their brain gets wired through repetition, and, the other things about the growth mindset, making a mistake and owning it, and using it as a stepping stone to learn rather than being ashamed of it.
And that's so valuable, isn't it?
Oh, it's extremely valuable. That alone has increased my growth exponentially from where I would have been, because I was someone who felt so much shame about the mistakes I was making, that, that I wasn't perfect with something, and that perfectionist sort of thinking that actually stifles learning so much.
Oh, very much so.
Yes.
I think we need to teach children, how to love failure, because, and I think when we don't achieve our goals, first, do we have clarity with our goals, and are we actually putting in the right steps in the right process order to achieve our goals? If it's not timed, and if we don't take right heartfelt action, if it's not aligned to our highest good, if we're doing it for someone else and not for us, and it doesn't matter what the goal is, but if we're not doing it for us with right heartfelt intention, we're not going to be able to achieve that goal, because we've already then got one foot on the brake. We don't want to do it. There'll be a resentment, or there'll be a second dialogue that's going through our mind, holding us back and sabotaging us. And we'll do anything to sabotage us so that we don't actually show people that we haven't been successful. We'll have another excuse. And,
well, that's our I've come to understand that as our reptile. So that's our reptile. Bring us back. Go back to where you're comfortable. You were surviving here. Get back here.
100%. We've got to change the level of our comfort zone from the basement level to the mezzanine level, build new neural pathways so that we're not going back like a hamster on a wheel from old habit. We're actually going, okay, we'll just go to here, or okay, that's comfortable, now we'll go to here. I think that's why mentors and coaches are so valuable, because they stretch us into a new comfort zone until when we get comfortable. It's a first sign of us knowing that we're not achieving our full potential. We know that we're capable of more, and we may be starting to come from a limiting belief, and the old self-talk will come through and hold us back. But your side, in the last 4 years since I've met you, your growth has been exponential in what you've done to bring self-worth and confidence to you. So your passion for your soul purpose may have been as an answer to the calling to help your son, recognizing that there's a lot of other people, not just in our own area, Macarthur, but in the world. And so you've now started to study and to learn, and your confidence has just blossomed. Has that also affected your eczema and your sleeping? Do you feel happier within yourself?
Incredibly, yes. I didn't realize that. As always, I didn't realize that stress was driving my eczema. I thought that my eczema was driving my stress.
Okay.
And
wow. So you've now changed drivers.
Yeah.
Which is a very powerful NLP technique to discern.
Well, along the way somewhere. Yeah, and along the way somewhere, I finally got this idea that I can control my thoughts. And that was a really foreign concept to me at first.
Wow.
I thought that I was a victim of my thoughts, you know, that my thoughts were my thoughts and I had no power over them. But once I realized I can change the way I think, I can change the way I talk to myself, that makes me change the way I feel about myself, that changes the attitude that I have. It's your belief system, as you know, that drives everything.
100%.
You know, so, and I'll give you an example. So when I was in primary school, I used to find everything quite easy. I was one of those annoying children who got A's everywhere and the teacher loved me. And it was, you know, I used to love spelling. I grew up in a place called Carlingford. And I used to love being able to spell Carlingford when I was in kindergarten. And, you know, it was just, yay, you know, I loved primary school. But I never learned about effort, okay? I was so enamored with the results I was getting that, you know, that was where my self-esteem was coming from. And then when I learned about the growth mindset and I was able to look back with that, you know, those glasses on, I thought, oh, wow, that's exactly true, because I actually struggled through high school. So by the time I finished high school, I thought I was as dumb as anything, because I had never put the effort in. I had never associated the results I was getting with the effort I was putting in. In primary school, I didn't have to put any effort in. But when I needed to in high school, I didn't put it in. I missed lots of bricks in my learning wall and bang, it collapsed. Yeah, you know. Wow, so really I did actually want to be a teacher when I was a little girl.
I didn't. I hated school. I never wanted to be a teacher. I hated school. I wagged and ran away and did all the wrong things. And then I went full circle and thought, really what kids need is somebody that empowers them and engages them and gives them a passion for learning. And that was what took me back into teaching, which was amazing. So I know it's amazing what our driver is, isn't it? Find the driver. That's what they say.
It is.
And be the driver.
It's true. Yeah, 100%. It's true. So it made it very clear to me that this growth mindset helps children who are struggling learners, because they become so disabled by their mistakes and they're, you know, thinking that I haven't got a natural talent for this. And they... And how that translates to children who are highly talented as well. And not that I'd say that I was highly talented.
You can be bullied for being highly talented as well. And so they start being small and pulling back.
So the growth mindset is a wonderful mindset to develop for all kids, you know. And the other thing I like, I did a lot of reading about the growth mindset in the workplace as well. And that when you are owning your mistakes, when you are expecting learning to be awkward and messy at first, and when you understand that it's not talent that counts, it's the process and the effort that you put into things, that you start to see that people are less likely to throw someone under the bus or blame someone else for something, because they're not keeping up that facade of, you know, I don't make mistakes, so I'm perfect, so I deserve the promotion sort of thinking. You know what I mean? So it's a very healthy attitude to develop. And it's also too that when the children learn the neuroplasticity side of things, they understand that anybody is capable of growth. And that's beautiful.
And we don't want to stop growing, to have a growth mindset and to be developed and to continually be developed and supported to reach your full optimum potential, instead of ever shrinking and holding back because we feel that we're not enough, or that we're too much, or we're too loud or too quiet, or too, you know, too over the top, or we, you know, we hide and we can't put ourselves out there. Our story really is the program, isn't it, that drives our vehicle. And we're the vessel, we're the vehicle that really achieves or not. And so you're now, what's the name of your business today?
It's Brainwise Learning, but I have just trademarked my program, which is the Fast Forward that I spoke about before. That's that online program.
Fantastic.
Put it together with
congratulations. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
For someone that was
and I'm calling it
too shy to move forward, you've actually taken full ownership and trademarked it. Well done.
And I'm calling it Learnerobics.
I love that.
Yeah, because I like the idea that people can understand that it's about exercise, you know.
And it is, it's the repetition of building muscle, and our brain is a muscle.
Yeah.
And it's so underutilized. We only use 5% of our brain capacity at any one time. There's 95% of our brain with wasted thoughts, living in the past or worrying about the future, which is anxiety, creating fear. And this
well, that's the under the iceberg stuff, right?
Yes. So share that with us now, how you got into this, developed it, the studies, your clientele, and where you're at, where and your dreams. Now, I've given you about 10 questions in one.
Okay, I can remember it all.
It doesn't matter, in your own words. Just share the journey, I think, because it's beautiful to hear somebody who came from a place of concern and worry, and identifying that there was a lot missing, and finding yourself, going through that journey. You were called to action, but the action is not an easy journey. It's like an initiation, isn't it? And you get tested, one test after another, and we could give up. And we could go away, and we could go to our comfort zone and take the easy way out. But you didn't give up. Was there ever a time when you were going to give up?
So there was a time when I was close. So I'm very lucky that, my husband has a home for me to live in, and the grocery bills were being paid. So that wasn't under threat. But there was still a lot of pressure. And it was very difficult because I was starting a business with no skills on running it, with any skills of how to run a business.
Build the plane on the way down.
That's the one. That's the one.
I think that sometimes that's the best way to do it, because you're coming from your own sole purpose with passion. And if you wait till you've got it all together, you'll never start.
That's right.
That can be a limiting belief in itself. We'll never have it all together, and we'll never be enough. So you've actually, that's a powerful point that you've actually just said. So yeah, take us forward with that, if you will.
Well, it was because I had the growth mindset.
Yeah.
I thought, it doesn't matter where I'm starting from. There's other people who've got business degrees, and they've got business associates, and they've got business. I'll start from here, and I'm just going to keep growing. I'm just going to take a step, and I'm going to look around, assess from that, take another step, look around, and make another assessment. And that's how I've basically done it. So I've been going for 4 years. I'm still quite a really tiny sort of outfit. I probably work with about between 10 and 20 clients at a time. I'm looking forward to growth, and of course, I'm looking forward to growth. I'm looking forward to reaching more people, but I've had to learn how to talk about these things. So if I talk to more professional people out there, neuroscience hasn't had the respect in the past, and it's changing now, but it hasn't had the respect in the past, where I could walk into a school, for example, and say, look, I've got this great program. It's neuroscience, it's evidence-based, it's got all the research, it's got 300 studies, it's got this and that. And that actually, what's coming up again now for me is the fact that, I'm just a mum, which I don't have that anymore.
That's a limiting belief, and your program steps in, the inner critic steps in and says, I'm not enough. Yeah. And I'm just a mum, and I don't know. Who do you think you are?
Exactly. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a speech pathologist. How could I possibly be doing this?
That's right.
So I would retreat. Often I would retreat. And in a way, COVID was a good circuit breaker for me, because I was able to do some more study and get stronger on my... I also had a coach. So I had this awesome business coach who was challenging me. He was challenging me.
Asking you.
No, he was challenging,
giving you tasks.
But he did a great job in really getting me to be...
that's stretching the comfort zone, isn't it?
He made me very uncomfortable at times.
Good.
And from that, I just kept going.
Good.
I just listened to that voice that says, don't give up. This is too important, this is just too important. And as it turns out now, through business networking, I'm learning a lot of skills through the business network, because there's often training, whether it's social media, which I never really understood, but I'm getting closer. Now I'm starting to understand what social media is and how I need to use it for my business. I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable when I make presentations, when I talk about my content. But there's a lot of people think that learning challenges cannot be improved. So when I come along and say that they can, it can be challenging, for want of a better word, because I'm challenging people's belief systems. You know, I talk about in many of my presentations about a young boy called Noah, who was born in England about 10 years ago, and he only had 2% of a brain. Now he's
well, especially when we only think that we only use 5% of our brain. He's not that far behind us, really, is he?
He had physically 5% of a brain.
That's what I'm saying. We only choose to use 5%. So, like I'm saying, he's not that far behind us. So
well,
when we put it into that context, how did you work with it, and how did you hear that?
Oh, no. This is a story that I tell because it's a beautiful story and it's extremely inspiring. I hope to meet him one day. I really do, and his parents, because instead of treating, when he was born, instead of treating him very gently and not making him move or do anything, they actually massaged him. So at that time, they were connecting his peripheral nervous system and his central nervous system to his brain and putting a demand on his brain to grow. So, and they were giving him lots of physical therapy, lots, like you wouldn't believe, more than is given to anybody else, you know, by 100. And because he was a little baby, he was, you know, doing the therapy. And by the time he was 3, he had something else going on and they needed to take another brain scan. And in this video I have, they put the 2 brain scans together, and there's 2% of a brain in one scan and there's 85% of a brain in another.
Wow.
And it's just the brain, because he was so young as well, you know, the brain is made for growing at that point.
That's phenomenal, isn't it?
It's just incredible. And you, in that book, The Brain That Changes Itself, it talks about people who have had hemispherectomies. That's where an entire half of the brain has been taken out because of epilepsy or something like that. And their prognosis is, you know, they won't be able to do much after. They'll basically sit in a chair and we'll have to feed them. But these people are working, they're talking, they're moving around, they're independent living. And it's because of the hard work they've put into moving and doing and, you know, putting that demand on their brain. The brain will adapt. I mean, only the other day I was talking about how the brain is not supposed to read. It wasn't evolved for that, ever. It's evolved for pattern recognition and it's evolved for all these other skills.
And it sees, that's why it identifies signs and symbols and colours and codes and patterns.
Yes,
so,
brain loves patterns.
100%. And really that's the repetition of numbers or design.
Yeah, but the fact that most people can read shows how incredible the brain is, how amazingly adapted it is to survive in its environment. You know, this is why we don't speak a language that we've never heard of before, because our brain hasn't had a chance to code all those sounds in. It hasn't had the repetition in hearing all those sounds. But I guarantee if you lived in France or Holland or Iceland long enough, you would start remembering the sound patterns for the language. You'd start coding them in. You'd hear the difference between them, and you'd be soon speaking the language.
But even a dog can understand its French owner and may not understand a German or a Chinese or Japanese owner. And a child growing up with 2 multicultural parents, one speaking, you know, French at home and the other one speaking German at home.
Well, I had a little bit of that.
That's right.
So my brain is half wired in Dutch. So
wow. So that would have been a massive influence on you in itself. And so this child grows up not thinking that it's different because it can speak French and German, and it goes to an English-speaking school because of how the parents are multicultural and travel. So this child grows up with, by the time it's 5, it's fluidly speaking 3 languages.
Yeah. which is
And we see
incredible.
that as a huge achievement, but it's just a normal, natural part of the growth.
It's what the brain does. It adapts to the demand you are putting on it. So whatever is being repeated, the brain picks up on that pattern and it says, if you keep repeating this, I'm going to lay down the pathways to make it easier for you. And that's what you see in practice. So that the example I give the most is a child playing piano. Often when they first start, they're a little bit awkward, you know, all these sorts of things happening. But with more practice, the whole network becomes more refined and more graceful. And that is the electricity or the potential signals traveling on a faster pathway, because the more you repeat, what the pathways do is lay down a myelin sheath, which is an oily substance, and that makes the signals travel much faster. But it only comes through repetition.
Do you love that or what? When you
it's amazing.
You can't do it, and then after doing it a second time, you're not so anxious. By doing it a third time, you're starting to feel slightly more confident, and by the fourth or fifth or sixth time, you're not even thinking about it.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time when you were learning to drive a car and you, oh my God, you can't breathe, and
yes,
and especially if it was a manual and you were having to do a hill start or the traffic lights and there was a car parked behind you and your father or someone's yelling and screaming at you to come on, hurry up and do this, and you got to get the brake and the accelerator. All of this information is coming in. We go into overwhelm so quickly.
Yes,
there's just too much information coming through.
That's right. And
if you've got a processing disorder on top of that, that would make it just so much more challenging for everybody.
Well, like my son didn't have any trouble getting a driver's license, and he's now happily driving. So that's good for his independence.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that he's out and about now and finding his own way.
How old is he now?
21.
Wow.
So I'm getting used to being the mother of an older boy now who is actually very capable, and he'll find his way. I don't worry anything like I used to. And you were asking before, when did my skin start to settle down?
Yeah.
I think it was about the time I started my business and started to realize I've got a purpose. And, you know, I wasn't at the mercy of my thoughts anymore. Once I realized I can control my thoughts. So when I feel something coming up these days, I'm more likely to say, I released the pattern that caused this itch.
Oh, fantastic. I love that.
I'll use that a lot. I released the pattern that caused the itch.
And does that have an instant effect on you? Can you feel
No,
instant?
It never does.
How do you keep going through that? Do you just
keep doing it?
I release the pattern that's causing me this itch. I return back to source, all that is no longer mine.
I mean, you do feel good at first, of course, because you're actually trying to make yourself feel good. And so you're going to have some neurochemistry that makes you feel good about that. But it's over time. That's
a repetition, isn't it?
Yeah, always repetition.
I think that always brings me back to that feeling that if we're not in alignment with our thoughts and what we choose to bring towards us and our emotional response to that, if they're not in alignment, which really is the triangle, isn't it? And that affects our heart, our lungs, our emotions, and that affects every cell in our body. So our biology is a direct result of our thoughts. And we need to change our thoughts to be able to change every cell in our body, our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual body. When we come into alignment, it's like if we're going to go on a diet, the word DIE, cross that off, because you know it doesn't work. Nothing that you do is going to make it work because it's starting with DIE. So we've got to change the way we actually look at it as a lifestyle change. We've got to change our thoughts. We've got to change probably our associations to our thoughts, our friends, the patterns that are leading into unwanted beliefs or patterns that are sabotaging surrounding us, because we'll always want to take the easy way out. That's the part of the unconscious mind. That's the comfort zone. Yeah. We always want to go back to what's comfortable, what's easy.
Yeah.
We've got to retrain it, like you were saying, create a new neural pathway.
Well, see, the brain will make you comfortable in any situation. So say you've grown up in a stressful situation.
Yeah.
You wonder why people keep choosing that pattern over and over again, because that's what's familiar.
And that's why domestic violence or abuse or, negative relationship patterns or codependence, if we've lived in a situation where we weren't emotionally supported or weren't emotionally listened to or seen or valued, we don't know how to present ourselves in a public arena or going to school or socially. It can affect us. So we've got to go back to, and I think that's where we begin healing that inner child. And there's a
lot of brain parenting movements, especially
fantastic.
in America.
And have you noticed the big improvements with people's social behavior patterns as well with this, and the inner child, that little baby girl or boy that felt that they weren't enough?
It's huge, because we now understand that what we model to our children is what they pick up.
That's right, exactly.
When I do my growth mindset coaching I don't do it with the child, I actually do it with the mum.
Yeah, 100%.
So because I know that you can't teach a growth mindset to a child. The child needs to experience it, needs to be modeled.
Every day, repetitively.
Yes. Yeah. And it's very empowering for mum too. That's why I love coaching mum with growth mindset, because, if she's been wanting to achieve something and has felt, held back by something, possibly that might help her as well. Yeah.
Help them both, and then the father or the dad, how does that, that again, everything's connected and interconnected, isn't it?
That's right.
History. So how do we go through that and bring communication? Because if you're empowering one, that changes the dynamic of the whole family. How do you navigate that?
Well, I mean, I haven't worked with that many where the father is that engaged. Often he's not. But I'm thinking back to a client. So yeah, mum was empowered. Okay, so they
just look up to the sky and just breathe in just a few breaths, because there's clearly a trigger. And when we feel the trigger, I don't want to do a spiritual bypass and ignore it and push it under the mat. I think the best thing to do is to breathe into the feeling that you're having, own the emotion, and just tap on your higher heart and just simply say, I am safe. I hold all of the light I need. I have all of the tools and resources I need. I am safe.
Thank you.
Just bring yourself back home to you and love your journey, and love the emotion. And emotion is a feeling that is moving forward. We don't want it to get stuck or do a spiritual bypass and push it under the mat like it doesn't happen. We need to own it and say thank you and move it forward.
It's an area where I would like to do more work.
I can help you with that.
Because I do feel that men get a bit of a rough deal, especially young men these days. I think, young men especially feel displaced. They're not too sure how to talk to a girl anymore.
I think that's the truth.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We're building the feminine, the divine feminine, but we can't have a divine feminine if we don't allow the divine masculine to take place. We need to have the divine the feminine and the masculine. It's the yin and the yang. It's the light and the dark, the negative and the positive. We need both. It's the duality of our life force. And without one, we can't have the other.
That's right. And I see a lot of the fathers I know were little boys with learning challenges once too that were never addressed. Yeah. And they they may have mental health problems now, they may be incarcerated, they may just feel not enough. And I think women are better at talking about things than men are. And so I think men need to be given
a greater social network.
Yeah, given more permission to speak. And I think that it just makes me want to reach, you know, the kids now and improve their learning, because every time I hear about whether it's a school shooting in America, anything like that, there's an awful lot of angry people out there who had learning challenges that weren't addressed. And we can address them now, you know. Once I, you know, have this business working enough where I can have some time out of the business and working on things, I'd like to be able to work with people who really need this. You know, it'll take more time because there's more pain and there's a longer time of those patterns being repeated. But yeah, I would like that very much. So.
And I think you've articulated that beautifully as well, Monique. So I really value your heartfelt emotion and your connection to your emotion. I think that's really important to show people that when we do things for right heartfelt intention, it's our why. And when life is tough and we don't have the business or the clients, because our why is so strong, you keep going against all odds. You're not giving up because your passion for your sole purpose is so strong. It's your why. They become the wheels of your motion to keep moving you forward. And we don't know where that path will take us. You know, I think it's branches off on different people and journeys, and that's our growth and development again. And we look back over our life and we think, wow, we wouldn't be where we are today if we had a smooth and cushy, perfect life. I wouldn't be the life coach I am today if I had a perfect childhood. I have empathy with my clients without being an empath.
Yeah.
And I've understood the difference between the two. And I think that's really important to even separate that two out right now. Because when I was reflecting back on being an empath, and you hear that term being passed around a lot, and you became almost an empath just a moment ago. And I've noticed that over the time with you, that's actually going to be a negative quality that you have. Anybody that is an empath are disadvantaging themselves because they take on the emotion of the situation that they're feeling. They become what the negative energy that they're actually trying to work with. So they can't work with somebody or something if they're stepping in to be part of the problem. We can't be the rescuer. If we're going to be the rescuer, we will always become their victim. Not if, it's when. And we get annoyed and we get resentment and we get frustrated. And we then become the perpetrator or shut down or feel like you've made me feel like this. But no one has done this to us. It's our mindset that's created. So again, if we go into that triangle, that pyramid, and I always feel that when we're in our own awareness and we step into awareness is the first stage of all healing. And on our first stage of awareness that we're stepping in to being the empath, and we're owning their feelings, and we're recognizing that we are becoming like a vortex sucked in to their world, we can't help them. We become null and void and useless. So what we have to do is recognize it as soon as you can, have awareness, step away from that, and say thank you, because it's the initiation, it's never going to stop. And I think then we can have empathy for that person. And when we have empathy, I think that creates space to hold compassion. And when we have compassion, we can sit in the shadow without becoming part of the shadow. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So I think it's really important the sooner you have awareness, Breathe it in, own it. Don't have that spiritual bypass. Don't shut it down. Don't lock it in. Otherwise, you'll start itching. You'll just recognize it, let it go. Just allow. Have the capacity to allow with gratitude and say thank you. Breathe it in. And when you can sit in the shadow with the person with trauma and you're listening to their stories and you're helping, you're able to walk beside them. You're no longer wanting to do it for them. You're no longer wanting to have the God energy to fix them, which is, part of the problem. We've got to allow them to do their own work. We've got to be free to choose what we choose to bring towards us.
Mm-hmm.
We can't become a religious, person that wants to go out and knock on doors and tell everybody that you found NLP or you found this new way of doing something and it works. You've got to try this. Oh my gosh. I think I went through that stage myself. And now I recognize we all have our own time and our own space, and we have to own our own story and we've got to be ready to change our own story. We're the lead actor or the lead actress in our own movie, and we need to rewrite our movie or our book or our frame, our perspective. We've got to change it from the inside. And you could hear someone telling you 1,000 times and you won't get it. And then all of a sudden you'll have this epiphany and you go, oh my God, I just had this amazing breakthrough. How did it take me so long? I've heard it, I've read it, but I've just got it. And I think that happens to me all the time.
Yes.
And I love that. When you get stuck like that, have you ever had that feeling of working your way through the emotion and not locking
So
what would you share with people with your perspective, because you work with this now and as a mum and an empath, and now we recognize empath can go over there, we choose say thank you. I will have empathy, which gives me compassion to work in the shadow with the person without trying to fix them.
Yes.
Give them the tools. It's like Jesus, and I'm not religious. Jesus said, let me teach you how to fish rather than giving the village the fish. And, when we look at it like that, it may take longer and it may be slower, but it's so much more valuable, isn't it?
Oh, much more. So I haven't had a whole lot of experience with that yet. So
as you're stepping into that arena of, identifying your, niche or, that passion of interest, you're going to have a lot of experience. And it will stir up the mirror in you, because when we're working with other people, they will always present to us the mirror. That's why we can get so angry and so annoyed with other people. But we need to look at, well, what's been triggered in us and what am I doing to bring that towards me? We're not responsible for their actions or their inactions. I think that's discernment. We can separate that out and say, well, okay, we can have our values, we can have our boundaries, we can communicate what we choose to bring towards us. We need to keep focusing on what we choose to bring towards us with highest intention. And your intention is so pure and so beautiful. What's your immediate goal in the next, this year, 2023? You've grown so much in your business and your mindset, and your son is now 21. What are your dreams and your goals for 2023?
Okay, so mine are going a little bit further than that, so maybe 2 years ahead.
Let's just stay back into it this year, because we can have a 5-year plan. But when we look too far ahead, we can sometimes lose face of where we are today. What's your goal for this afternoon?
For this afternoon? Survive.
Breathe. And own your emotions. That's great. So what's your goal for tonight?
The goal for tonight, so I've got to get some, it's the end of the month is coming, so I want to write, this is one of the things my coach taught me to do, is write a board report, which I present to my family.
Oh, I like that. That's a fabulous idea.
Really nice. So at the end of each month, I prepare a report, and we present it to them. And my son usually has some really cool questions for me.
I really like that idea. That's a fantastic idea.
It's nice because I can take them on the journey with me, which is really nice.
And they can see your growth of what it is. So, and what are your plans for next week? You know, when you own your day, yeah, you're the captain of your own ship. You're the master of your own soul. If you don't take control of your day, you can guarantee someone coming and controlling it for you.
So in the first week of every month, I prepare my marketing.
Okay, good. Fantastic.
So I like to get that done in the first week of the month, and then for the rest of that month, I can concentrate more on my clients, servicing my clients really well, catching up with them. Also, you know, chasing new ones. You know,
Can I reframe that?
Yes, of course.
Chasing. It's like a dog chasing a ball or a bone, isn't it? So you're always chasing after something. What would happen if you held something valuable and your client came to you, or the dog came and took it out of your hand?
I'm hoping for that, but my business is such that I need to do a lot of increasing
awareness and education.
A lot of awareness. Yeah. So one of the things I've done is start a meetup group, which is going to be in Camden.
I love that.
Wednesday every month. Yeah, it's very exciting. It's about to talk about auditory processing disorder.
Tell me about that. Where do you meet and what day or time? So
the very first one is going to be at the House of Art Cafe.
Oh, fantastic. My favourite.
It's the loveliest cafe. I really,
and what day?
On the first Wednesday of every month. So that'll be Wednesday, the 1st of February at 1:30. And I'm hoping to catch mums before they pick up the kids from school, so they can sit down and have a nice cup of tea before they go and pick up the kids from school. And we're just going to talk about auditory processing and introduce the idea that there's a reason for learning challenges and we may be able to improve it.
I love that. That is just fantastic. I want you to put a link on the bottom of, send that link to me, because I think that will be fantastic as a meetup group with locals in the Macarthur area to meet with Monique Peters at the House of Art Cafe in Camden and just hear your stories and hear other people's stories, so that you can create greater awareness and give them the tools to be able to help starting to change their own neural pathways to create a greater auditory processing and greater self-worth and confidence. And it's going to change every part. That's a fantastic place to start.
It is.
I'm really proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would love to join you for a cup of tea one day.
Yeah. Come and join us.
I will. I'll pop in.
The reason why I'm sort of going into a bit of overdrive with the marketing is because there's long waiting lists for speech pathologists and assessments and all those things. And with mine, you don't need that. You don't need assessments or a diagnosis or anything. You can basically jump on the program and do it.
And how does the program work? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, it's just an online program. So the children will log in to a website with their
This is your online program?
No, this is a program that comes from America. So Fast for Word it's got neuroscience, teams of neuroscientists behind it. I could never have written anything like this.
Never say never.
That's right. They do a whole bunch of exercises that are related to attention, memory, and the processing of auditory processing skills.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What are your plans to move forward with that now, with your trademark of Learnerobics? You've got a machine too that you put over people's
yes, I do. Oh, I don't have.
Would you like to show us that? Do you have it there? That's okay. That's putting you on the spot, isn't it? We'll have you back another time for another chat. And if anybody has any questions, will you be bringing that machine with you to the House of Art in Camden too?
Yes, I will, because it's very helpful in helping children with their reading practice. Because
how does it work? Can you talk us through that?
So yeah, it has what they call a dynamic filter on it, which adjusts the sound of your speech to make your speech sound more pleasant. And there's a sort of an in and out sort of quality to it, which surprises your brain and makes it pay attention. So it's helpful for children who have attention issues. But it also uses bone conduction. So you actually sit it on the bones here. And your skull is the most amazing bone conduction device ever. And when you put this headset on, you can hear yourself more clearly. And what that does is help people wire their brain for sound much more clearly. It gives the whole auditory processing system a good workout. So I recommend it most for my clients when they finish the online program, and then they use it just for reading practice, because they can read whatever they like. As you know, I've used it to help me learn singing in French.
Yes.
I use it to rehearse for my presentations.
Fantastic.
People use it to help them learn English with, or learn another language with.
Does it help with retention, studying for exams, or
Yes.
for people that are, like they understand it in a classroom, but they can't recall it for an exam?
As long as you're reading it out loud and using your voice, yes, it will help you with that, because, and it's solely because of the attention paying aspect of it. So because you're paying more attention, you will remember more.
Fantastic. So the repetition, but also saying it and hearing it coming back. And
because
then
what you're doing, you're correcting yourself, because you're hearing yourself more clearly. So they've had a few children who were not very verbal using it. And as the children improve, because at first a speech pathologist can talk into it. And a lot of speech pathologists use it for this, to encourage the child to build an auditory processing network, but then the child starts to take over and listen and use their own voice.
Wow.
Mm.
And you would notice a huge improvement with the child's confidence and self-worth, and they would just blossom when they can start to hear themselves sounding like, and improving with that sound, and they want to do it more and more, so it becomes encouraging and self-motivating, becomes a self-propelling
Yes.
prophecy, doesn't it?
Well, when my son started using it, he didn't stop reading for about 7 months.
Wow. Out loud?
Yeah, out loud.
Wow, because he loved hearing what he was hearing back. So that would have increased his memory and growing his brain. It would be interesting to do the brain x-ray or whatever it is, encephalograph, to be able to see.
I wish I could do those sorts of things.
To measure the success of what you're doing. Wouldn't that be, it'd be great if you could even team up with somebody that, is doing this, for you to work with the medical science to prove. I guess that's how you do get, the recognition that you can measure the success of it, can't you?
Yes. And one of the things I'm doing for this year, you asked about my year plans, is I'm enrolling in a course with Dr. Daniel Amen in America. He does a lot of brain stuff.
Fantastic.
Really,
so
really
that's very exciting. So there'll be a huge, I would love to recap. And is that for the whole year, or?
Yes. Well, it's you study at your own pace, which is what I need, because I'm so busy. So I don't know how long it will take me to
have all of the time I need.
I have all of the time I need. I'm really excited about it, though. I'm really looking forward to enrolling in that, and hopefully by March or April I'll be enrolled and ready to go. Why
between March and April?
Because I've got so many other projects.
I have all of the time I need.
And that's but I need to get those done. And so
and that's prioritizing, isn't it? So you recognize what's most important and just ticking it off, clearing the deck, and
which hasn't always been a skill for me. So this is
that's why I'm picking you up on it. I can see it rolling, and I can see it becoming it could be a sabotage. So you may need to prioritize it as the most important thing that you need to have to bring towards you. I'm starting today because then I'm prioritizing me. I value what I'm doing. It will contribute to every part of my life. And when you take that right action, it's amazing how you will tick off everything else that needs to be done, because you're changing the priority order of what's most important.
I think I need to study NLP.
I know someone that can help you with that.
Great.
As a good NLP life coach. Yeah, but I don't have to be everything to you. And I think we need to have a lot of other people
Yes.
in our life as mentors and coaches and trainers and facilitators. I think it's really fabulous to, we need to, I think, because you need to make this your own, as well. And where I am when you need me. But at the same time, it's great for you to have other people's experiences and knowledge to make it your own. And I think that's really important. And when I was going through art school, I felt I'd never wanted to just study with one artist. I love studying under different styles and different artists. So I can take, like, I always see it like the gold pan, if we just take one nugget of gold out of a learning or a workshop or a facilitation, and let all of the silt just go through. We don't need to keep everything. We don't have to hold on to everything. We've got to have discernment of what to keep. What is our nugget of gold?
Yes.
And make that our own. We don't need to copy everyone. And, I think when we have the energy in our own why, we're coming from, and no one can copy your passion or your story or, your empathy that you bring to the table that creates a dynamic compassion now to sit in the shadow, to allow others, because you have that empathy, you can now empower them to walk their own journey rather than you making them do it or rescuing them to do it. You're empowering them through free will to make their own choice. And I think there's a lot of self-growth that you're giving them, and a self-worth and empowerment. If you were to say one thing to the people watching today, what would you say to them to inspire and motivate them to take the action to start changing what's not working for them in their world, to bring to them what it is they really want? What would you say to them today?
I would start with definitely the idea that you are in charge of your thoughts.
Beautiful.
You don't need to let your thoughts run away with you. You do actually have control over them, and you can change the way you think. And once you start to change the way you think, when you recognize, if something comes up and you recognize it as an unhealthy pattern, then all you keep doing is keep recognizing it. And even if you're just saying to yourself, oh, I recognize that's where it is, because as soon as you do start to feel that you want to change it even further. And change your language. And when you change your language, you start to change how you feel. You start to change your behavior. You start to change your attitude. So many things start to change.
That's true.
Where I used to think I was a complete idiot and I could not do a single thing, I would never have taken this journey.
Wow. And look at where you are today. And as you now breathe in all of the power of your journey, is there any part of your life that you would give up today to return back to any part of your journey as a child or a young adult growing up? Or are you totally happy with where you are today?
I am totally happy here now.
Isn't that beautiful?
I had a beautiful childhood. Like, I was blessed with a beautiful, beautiful childhood. And my mother's passed away now, so that's not going to happen. But I'm so happy with where I am now, because, and it's not, I'm not saying that as like a fairy tale type thing, because I've done this or this that's put me here. It's just that idea of growth.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. It's a wonderful way of looking at it, isn't it? As the sequence of the chapters in your movie, that's all brought you to where you are today. And what's the next chapter for you? You were going to say, I stopped you from sharing what your goal is for 2 years' time. What is the next chapter in your movie, Monique?
Okay, so it turns out I wrote a chapter for a book. A lady approached me on LinkedIn, and she really liked my story. She's a carer, a full-time carer of her daughter, and she was putting together an amazing book of incredible stories, and she wanted me to be in there. So I wrote it, and it looks as though it may be published in about March and launched about March this year in Melbourne. So
2023. Wow, fantastic. That's exciting.
That's very, very exciting. But what's also exciting is what's happening along the journey. So these are the things that I love to look at now, this incredible process.
Yeah.
Meeting the other authors and hearing about their incredible stories and their incredible businesses that they've started to help people navigate NDIS, or you know, some of them have very, very high needs children, or high needs parents, or in whatever aspect they're caring. You know, it's lovely to hear that their stories are going to be told. Yeah, they've got some very incredibly and very empowering stories to tell.
Yeah. And it's beautiful that you come from such a beautiful heart space to hold their stories. And with that empathy and the compassion you bring to the table, that's definitely going to be how you move forward, I think, not by being the empath, but holding empathy as it's a gift rather than a curse. And I think celebrate the gift and have awareness when you feel it. Have awareness and own it, and just simply say thank you, but you know what, I don't need you anymore over there. Just, you can sit beside me over there, but you know, I'm just now learning to process this so the other person can feel their pain without me becoming the pain, or you know, entering into that. I've loved talking with you today, darling. Thank you so much for coming on to my podcast. So I want you to share your contact details so that if anybody has questions, it would be great if they could post the questions under, I think, this link on YouTube, so it could be shared with more people, rather than trying not to address it all personally. See if you can, you know, once it becomes personal, and then you're kind of course, that's great. But it's great if they can ask the questions or make the contact, or and allow, you know, the message to grow, to reach more people, because I think that that's one of your goals as well, one-to-one and one-to-many. And I think that's what's brought me into this arena, not trying to fix one person, but to share people's stories, that if we didn't go through our own initiation journey or our own dark night of the soul, and the pain and the anguish that we've gone through has created, I think, you know, the healer that we are today. It's our why, on with a big deep root cause on our passion to help other people. And I think that propels us forward when things get challenging, and life will always go on around us.
Yes.
We need to not buy into the story of what's going on outside of us, and keep focusing on what's going on inside of us.
Very true.
Lots of love. Share. I know that you've got only contacts, so if there's any names or contacts that have been mentioned with Fast Forward or Learnerobics, all of the contacts, we'll share that with the YouTube podcast that's going, or vidcast that's going up today. How does that sound for you?
Sounds wonderful.
Over and out, gorgeous girl. Thank you so much for your time. I think we might get you back in a few months' time to share your journey once you've started working with Dr. Ramon, to let everybody know that, yeah, we're tasking you now. We want to hear all about it.
Sounds great.
All right. Have a beautiful weekend. Thanks
a lot, everybody. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. I am so honoured to walk beside you as we support each other in connection and collaboration in our community.